NLCP Level 3 Shade Trees. Box elder with its bright green leaves is usually found in bottomland hardwood forest. It's usually not found as a standalone specimen tree. Its young leaves with 3 leaflets are often confused for poison ivy, but the structure of the plant is very different. It is a tree, and box elder has leaves that are attached opposite from each other. Older leaves may have more than 3 leaflets as well. The leaves on box elder are always attached opposite. On poison ivy, they're alternate, so it's easy even to tell the young ones apart. Shouldn't be confused for poison ivy. It's a great wildlife tree and probably deserves more use in our landscape. Another characteristic of box elder that you see in this photo are the bright green stems of the young branches. That's a little bit diagnostic in the woods. You can see that. Unfortunately, it's hard to get a photo of a big tree because it's usually mixed in with other trees. Big-tooth maple is named for the large, coarse teeth at the edges of its leaves. This one has been growing in shallow soils over chalk for many years at the Heard Museum, and the leaf color is still great.
It's a pretty look to the foliage on this one. A little bit lacy, quite nice. Up a little bit further, you may be able to see the winged samaras, the fruit of this maple.
This maple thrives in dry, chalky conditions where other maple species might not.
Maples are not common in North Texas as wild plants. There are only a couple of types that do well here in our chalky alkaline soils.
The leaf color in the fall on the Drummond's red maple is just spectacular. If you came from somewhere famous for its fall color, you might need one of these.
Much of the parking lot at Oak Point Park in Plano is planted with these Drummond's red maples. And just recently, the color on these got to be really stunning. Their fall color is developing. They are red and peachy and maroon, all these lovely fall colors, almost like you would see in another state that's famous for fall color. But this is that Drummond's red maple, Acer rubrum, really pretty. And this is a special variety within Acer rubrum, so you want to look for that too. Here's another one of those Drummond's red maples, looking really good out here this week.
This is essentially growing in a floodplain in heavy black clay soils that are alkaline. Here's the beautiful blue-green, almost gray foliage of the lacy oak growing at the Heard Museum. This oak has been in place for over 20 years. It's not a huge tree. It's probably 25 to 30 feet tall, but it's been in this place for well over 20 years. So I would not call this a large or fast-growing oak. Very well suited for the smaller size of a lot of suburban landscapes and urban yards. Its color is quite unique, and the little wavy edges on the leaves are also very pretty. Here we have one of the smaller cultivars of Magnolia grandiflora. Big ones get truly huge at up to 80 feet tall and 40 feet wide in spread, but there are many small selections perfect for the home landscape at a more reasonable size for most people. The beautiful, heavy, deep green leaves harbor these developing cones after the flowers have fallen, and that cone will then darken and reveal a bright red seed inside. The leaves themselves are very deep, thick green, and quite a substantial leaf on these. They were fun to play with when I was a kid. I remember that quite well. But almost every piece of the tree has an interesting look to it. This one was done blooming for the year for the most part, but still had a few big blossoms way up high that I couldn't reach, and a few buds that were larger than my fist that had not quite opened yet. But most of the blooms would have occurred earlier in the summer on these specimens here. There's one bud way up at the top. Even the undersides of the leaves have an attractive look on this plant. The whole thing is just really good looking. From the developing cones to the mature cones. This huge bud will open into a flower that's maybe more than 8 inches across and intensely scented. All other parts of the plant have an interesting spicy smell when crushed.
Here at Bethany Lakes Park in Allen, Texas, filming the bald cypress that is planted here at the edge of the lake. As you can see, this one is directly in the lake, and there is even a great blue heron underneath fishing. This cypress is perfectly happy being planted directly in the water, and there are several in the park. I'm going to walk forward and hopefully you'll begin to see the knees. They're called cypress knees underneath this tree. There we are. There's your heron and your cypress knees. The base flares out, and when planted in a place where it stays wet, they develop these knobby wooden knees that stick up above soil level or above water level. The tree is covered with little round balls, the fruit of this tree. It's really a cone, it's not a berry, and it is a very ancient lineage of plants. It's got a really neat look. I wanted to come out and get this one before it drops all its needles. The reason this is called bald cypress is not because it has balls hanging from it. It is B-A-L-D, bald, because this one will drop its leaves in the winter. Here's a close-up of the cones on the bald cypress. And that fine, almost ferny foliage. Right here at water level, there are those woody knees sticking up. It's characteristic of all bald cypress growing, and those buttress-like projections from the trunk of the tree there. All bald cypress that grow in wet locations will eventually develop those. And here right beneath my feet, you can see some places where it's been mowed off when it tried to develop knees there. It's another couple of places where those developing knees have been mowed off, and then some that were allowed to develop just a little bit further out there. simply been mowed off flat in the grass. If you do have a place where you can let a bald cypress develop cypress knees, that can be a really stunning effect. It almost looks like a little city here with all the tall buildings sticking up. And you'll always find lots of little fish activity and so forth between the knees when they're out in the water like that. I'm here in busy Plano near Coit Road, and I'm looking at a pair of bald cypress trees planted in an industrial landscape. There's actually an entire line of them down this street here, and they seem to be doing pretty well. I know these trees have been here at least 15 years. I've been coming by here for various reasons, and I see them. And I think that these do not have any knees. So I'm going to go over there and check and see. I want to show you that root flare close up anyway. Flare at the base of the tree that cypresses tend to develop. And we'll check to see if there have been any knees that had to be sawed off by the mowers. Here's a closer view of that root flare at the base of the cypress trees. And sure enough, it's beginning to develop those little buttresses out to the side. But I am looking at the ground around this tree, and it's even planted on a slope, and I see one root at the surface. I do not see any of the cypress knees that have developed that have had to be mowed off. So I would say this one is planted high and dry enough that it is not going to develop those roots. But yet it's a healthy tree. It does not have to live in a swamp, but it can live in a swamp.